Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi everybody, welcome back to Raising Confident Girls. I'm Melissa and I'm so happy you're here today. And I hope that you are having a great summer. If you are in North America, it is summertime if you're listening to this in real time. And also, you can probably hear animals in the background at my house because we do live on a small farm. So you're going to hear roosters crowing in the background, the chickens making strange noises, and the dogs. You never know what the dogs are going to do. So please know that those are the noises that you hear if you've ever wondered why there are strange noises. So, but that is not our topic today. Our topic today is preparing your daughter or the girl in your life for a new school year. And that may seem crazy to be talking about it in July. So in North America, typically we go back to school. In the United States, at the end of July or early August is typically when kids go back to school. I have Canadian friends who are just shocked by that, but they also go to school later in June. So most of us get out in May. And so it's just a different calendar. And if you are in Australia or New Zealand, I know that your schedule is opposite hours because our seasons are opposite. So listen to this now in preparing for a new school year. So what I typically would hear, and if you don't know this about me, I was a teacher for 23 years, really more than 23 years, if you count all the other teaching that I had done previously. I would hear a lot from the kids and parents, and even now, about how to prepare for school or what their daughters would need to prepare for school. Sometimes they were asking me, like, what should I do? And I want to give you some tips today that would help you ease that transition whenever that is for you in the school year. So what I would typically hear from elementary school students, and this even would start at the end of the previous school year, they would already start thinking about these things. Who's my teacher going to be? That was always the thing. And they would talk about it like, oh, I hope I get this teacher, or I hope whatever. I hope so-and-so is in my class. So teachers and friends are always a topic of discussion. And there's some fear around that. And what is the classroom going to feel like? What's it going to look like? There is a lot of curiosity around those things because those are securities for kids. And especially girls, because girls value social interactions differently than boys. And that relationship with the teacher, a lot of times girls will have, not always, but a lot of times they will have a deeper relationship with the teacher, or they'll connect in a different way than, say a boy would. And so that is normally what they are thinking about before a school year starts. Will my teacher be nice? Will we have a lot of homework? Will they let me sit by my friends? Will any of my friends be in my classes? There's a huge fear around getting a mean teacher who gives a lot of homework, and also in friends not being in the same class. Like, especially if it's a very comfort type of friend where they're either neighborhood friends or they've been in classes together several years and they are really wanting to continue that relationship, to continue it and deepen that friendship or start new friendships with people that they just started being friends with. So that is very common in elementary school. And that would be, grades K through 5 in the US and in my school district where I used to teach. And it's broken down a lot of different ways in different districts, even within just 15 miles of where we live too. So we won't get into all that, but however your school breaks down and whatever that elementary school or primary school age, those are typical fears. Homework always comes up too, like I said. And then middle school, it really is very similar as far as their biggest one though is, am I going to get lost? When they're transitioning to a new school, especially if they have to switch classes, they are concerned about getting lost. That's very common the first couple of weeks of school. They're very concerned with getting locked out of either a classroom or lockers and not being able to get their combination for their locker open. If your daughter goes to a school where they still issue lockers, some schools they will make it optional. The student chooses if they want a locker or not. And other schools they don't allow them to choose. They just assign the lockers. So they want to be familiar with that environment because they're really nervous about getting lost and looking like they don't know what they're doing. And I think even as adults, we can all relate to that. You want to look more put together, but when you first start something new, you don't always know where things are, what you're doing. And I think us saying that we understand to our girls is so important because we need them to know that they will figure it out. It may feel uncomfortable the first couple of days, but they will figure it out. And then friends and that social connection, again, are so crucial for girls. And so what they're looking for is who is in my core classes or who is on my team or however the school decides to put kids together. It can be a lot of different ways, but those are typical ones. And it's basically, am I going to have someone familiar in my classes? Because I think there's a fear of girls getting into classes and knowing no one. And it feels lonely. And I think what they're looking for is they don't want to be disconnected. They want to feel connected to the people in the room. And even though we know that they can make new connections and make new friends and all of that, that can seem very daunting and very scary to them because they want a little bit of familiarity, especially when it's a new school. They want at least a familiar face. And if they're a new student to a new school, if they've done a tour, at least the adult in the room or someone they recognize helps them feel a little bit more secure and less anxious in those situations too. And really, it's just, like I said, making those connections with friends and it's feeling accepted in the room. And we'll get into more of that in a little bit. And then in high school, it's mainly scheduling. When are their main core classes? Are they going to have enough time to get things done throughout the day, especially if they are working students? So in high school, they typically will have like a little after school job or babysit or do something like that. And what they're looking for is where can I get some of my work done so I don't have as much to do at home? Or they want to have more of a social life after school. So they're really concerned about their workload and the way their classes are set up and all of those things. And then really it's about their outfits is important to girls. And that doesn't mean you have to have a girl who's super into clothing and fashion. It can be, I talked to my son's girlfriend actually, and she's 16, and she told me that it's really about comfort, but it needs to look cute too. So they're really all about being comfortable at school. And that makes total sense. Like, you don't want to be, we've all been in that case, I'm sure, where we've been in a situation where we've had clothing on we don't feel good in or we don't feel comfortable in. And the whole day it's like bugging you and you cannot wait to get home to change. So she just talked about that, and workload and schedule is really important to her. So it really depends on the person, but those are very, very common things that come up in high school. And of course, you guessed it, a social. They want to, same thing, like you can see a through line. They want to make sure there's familiarity. Sometimes, though, they want kind of to mix it up and meet some new people, depending on your daughters or the girls in your life, like their personalities. So it's always going to be main things that are kind of through lines. And really, it is that they want predictability. And we all know that we can get in our own routine. And especially when we've just finished a school year, you develop a bond with teachers or friends. You get used to a schedule. You kind of get your rhythm down of how things go. And then the unique thing about being in school is it all gets flipped upside down only a couple months later, the next school year. So those are common things that I've heard girls talk about and parents talk about too. So the problem with these things can be adjusting to that new environment. So it's figuring out, where do I go? Where do I put my things? Even if it is an elementary school where the classrooms are relatively close together, meaning there are a few classrooms within a certain area, and most schools, except for the upper grades, they're relatively close by. Um, it's knowing, like, okay, how will I get to the cafeteria from here? How will I get to the library from here? How will I, go down the hall in the morning when I get dropped off at the car rider line or the bus line or whatever it is? So it's really just getting their new route, getting their new routine, and getting all of that established to where there comes a time where they don't have to think about that anymore. They can just concentrate on the more important things to them. And the second thing is that can be a problem is academic expectations. So every teacher can have their own system for turning in homework, late assignments, how they prepare them for tests, how much time they give in between projects. And especially when they have multiple teachers, sometimes it seems like, in the girls' opinion, that they all stack a bunch of work all in the same time frame, and then that can be overwhelming. So the fear is that they're going to have so much homework, hours and hours of homework at home. This is from the girls, and they're not going to have any time to do anything else. Like, they really don't want a lot of homework. So that is like a big concern that comes up a lot and a big problem for them. And knowing if their teacher is going to be super strict. So especially if they have really developed a close bond with the teacher the year before, if they are unsure about this next teacher, like they don't know them or they have a reputation for being a little bit more strict or whatever it is, there's a fear that they're not going to get along with the teacher, or just a curiosity about how will we work together, what will she or he be like. And then there are the social dynamics. So these are, cliques, these are friend groups, these, however you want to say it, inclusivity. So will I be included or will I be excluded? Will I be accepted or will I not be accepted? Those are things that often go through the girls' minds, is like, can I be myself and be accepted? And that is why it is such a huge core value of Girls Positivity Club that we are inclusive. We do help girls feel like they belong and that they're seen and that they matter and all of those things, because you want to be part of a group. And that is like that human need. They want to belong somewhere, even if it's just with one other person. They want to know they belong somewhere. They can sit with someone at lunch, whatever that would be. And will there be nice people in my class? That's something that they're like, what if all the girls in my class are mean and I'm stuck by myself? So again, it's that isolation, that fear of isolation. Organization skills are always going to come up when you're preparing for a new school year. So thinking about what went well last year, what worked, what didn't work, what can we change and improve? So those are things that can come up, is like, especially if you have a different expectations from teachers, a different expectation, it's like, okay, how can I make my life easier organizationally to where I'm going to thrive in this new environment? So that really is dependent on your daughter. Is like, okay, is she a folder person? Is she all digital? Is she a kind of person who likes a binder? Is she the type of person who likes, everything color coded? Or does she just shove everything in her backpack and it drives you crazy because you don't know where anything is and it looks like a train wreck in her backpack? So that is common. I mean, it just depends on what type of person, organizationally they are. And oftentimes a disorganized looking person has their own system, and it may look disorganized to other people, but they know where things are. And then there are people that don't know where anything is. So typically you will fall into one of those categories, either ultra organized, getting there, or needing help. And then the last problem that can come up when you're preparing her for a new school year is that emotional well-being, managing anxiety, excitement, fear, all of the feels. We want them to feel all the feels, but we want to also give them tools to not sit in one certain feeling all the time, but know that, I've said this lots of times, they're all valid. All feelings are valid. They're all normal. So just helping her manage that emotional well-being of a new school year. So I have some ideas for you of what you can do to prepare your daughter for it. And the first thing, and you probably have already done this, if you especially listen to the episode about transitioning to a new school in some way, visit the environment. The number one thing is to visit the environment. My teenager fought me so hard on going to the freshman orientation. Didn't need it, didn't want to go, all of those things. It would be dumb. No one else is going to go. Of course, that wasn't true. But the fact that we did go helped because there was a map. We were able to map out the whole schedule and see like, okay, here are the doors you're going to go in. Here's what way you're going to go. What do you think would be your best route? All of that. And it really, really helped on the first day have that confidence, even if they're still not super confident going in because they're thinking about all kinds of other things. It still helped in that regard. And you think about what can they control? What can you help them control? So you can't control everything. And I think it's having a conversation with them too about this. Like, you can't control every single thing that happens at school, but what can you control? I can control if I know where I'm going, if I'm a little bit familiar, and also normalizing it's okay if they don't remember. And I will tell you from middle school teachers, shout out to all the middle school and high school teachers, because in elementary where I live, you don't really switch classes. They stand in the hallways, they help the kids, they don't count tardies, like they're very kind about it and very helpful. So reassure her that there are going to be people to help and it's okay to ask for help. It's planting that seed too that you should ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. You can try on your own first and then ask, what rather than wander around, not know where you're going, and just struggle on your own. Like, obviously a little bit of struggle is fine, and we all struggle through certain things and we learn from it, but if you can get help, do it. There's nothing wrong with it. So that's the first thing. And if your school doesn't do like a back to school night, like in elementary school in this area, they do like a meet the teacher night. I highly recommend, if you can, take your daughter to those. Even if they're like, oh, I already know who she is or he is. Still take them because they'll get the feel of the classroom. You'll get to meet them in person. They'll get to meet them in person. They'll get to see kids that are going to be in their classes. They'll start to recognize faces, and it really helps calm the nerves of who am I going to be in class with. So unless you're out of town, and even if you're going to be out of town, I think pre-arranging ahead of time to visit the schools. Schools are great about that. Just contact the front office and they will set something up to where she could at least walk her classes or see where she'll be. So that's really important. And then making those connections with peers, especially over the summer, if you can, getting her together with someone from her class or at the back to school night or whatever, helping them connect again is really important. So if you can do that, if you can keep in touch with some school friends over the summer, that really helps that confidence and that familiarity with going back to school, even if they're not in the same classes. So the second thing is those academic expectations. So set small goals. If they do have teachers that have strict policies about homework or about projects or whatever that is, they usually tell you up front, or they say it to the kids. So helping her work in reverse and set those small goals that are going to lead her to what she wants to do. So if she's a planner and she knows there's a big project coming up, it's like setting those small goals to get there instead of waiting until the last minute. And being, the nice way to say it is like deadline driven. There are some kids that they just, no matter what, they will wait until the last minute, and that works for some people and some people it doesn't, to have that pressure at the end to get it done. So you just have to know your daughter and know, how to help her set those smaller goals along the way. And then routine. Start practicing the back to school routine like a week before if you can. Like, okay, here's the bedtime, because there's nothing worse than if they're used to staying up until 11 o'clock at night, having to then get up at 6 a.m. is very drastic for them. So gradually doing it doesn't have to be like, okay, we're going back to school in a week. No more staying up until 11. You could, but they're going to be tired when they get up. But you could also do where if they normally get up at 8, maybe you wake them up at 7:30. And then the next day, maybe you wake them up, or maybe it's 7:45. Then you do 7:30. Then you do 7:15. Then you do 7. And you like work in reverse and go, okay, how many days back would I have to go to get her used to getting up at 6 a.m.? And without it being such a drastic change of like 3 or 4 hours before she normally gets up. Same thing with bedtime. If you're like, oh, we're still on a summer schedule, we like to stay out, it stays light out longer, just back it up a tiny bit and just do that in increments to where, again, it's not a shock and it's not like this huge fight about, oh, you're going back to school, you have to go to bed at 8 o'clock. And they're used to being up until, like I said, 10 or something. So think about how you could do it in smaller steps that could really help. And, even with homework, having a homework place in your house. So a lot of people will say like they don't have the TV on, or maybe they play music in the background, which is like a calming or to help them focus. Like that's a technique. Are they going to do it at the kitchen table? Are they going to do it at a desk? Are they going to do it on the couch? Where do you prefer that they do their homework so that you're available to them if they need you? Do you sit down with them, or are they getting older to where they just come and get you if they need help? What's your procedure with that? What do you want to do this year? And I always think about, for me anyway, homework could be a very stressful time, especially for my son, because it was not always easy for him and still isn't sometimes. And there are certain subjects that kind of really make us impatient because, meaning him and I, because, he's trying to figure it out. And it's not that I'm impatient with him, but we get to the point where if we're not figuring something out, it can kind of wear on your patience or make you feel irritable, I guess would be a better way to say it. And then before you know it, you're both irritable. So it's like, what is the routine we can put in place? And when is the best time for her to do her homework? Is it right after school? Is it like, does your daughter need time after school to just decompress? And then you start it like an hour after she gets home. Is it after after school activities? Is she in sports or art classes or music classes? And it's really better to do it after those are finished. So think about those things and what would be best for you. And then if she needs academic support, not waiting until it gets dire. So we've made that mistake and it's been like, oh my goodness, we should have gotten help a lot sooner. So again, it's you asking for help too, and finding resources of either tutoring services, or sometimes retired teachers do it, or college students who love a certain subject will do it, or there are tutoring centers you can go to, but there are lots of avenues. And being proactive about it instead of reactive is something that, in my experience, works so much better. And I'm speaking as a teacher and a parent. So just something to think about with the academics. And then the social dynamics, one thing you can always do when things come up, and I don't think you have to prep them for every situation, but if there's something they're very concerned about, like what if I have no one to sit by at lunch? You can do like a little role play. And even if they're older, they'll think it's super, as they say, cringy. But it'll still be fun. Like they'll make it into like a funny joke, and they'll be like, I can't believe we're acting this out. But you don't have to do like full, characters or anything, but you can just go through like, okay, what would you do if, let's pretend like this is the lunchroom. What would you say to someone if it's open seating and you're not sure what to do? Like you go through the whole scenario. What would you say to someone if you're starting a group project and you want to get to know them? Just things like that. And you can practice things and help prime her for those situations that she's a little bit more unsure about. So I'm not saying it has to be every situation she ever is faced with in social interactions, but especially for a lot of the girls I've worked with, both in coaching and in the classroom and in Girls Positivity Club, is social anxiety. They are worried they won't know what to say. So giving them some ideas of what could you say when you're meeting someone new. Hi, my name is Melissa. What's your name? I mean, just something very simple, like how's your day going or whatever. And they can, you can brainstorm again what would be comfortable for them and what they would actually like to know about the person, without it turning into an interview and it being natural. Um, and, just talking about those things. And just doesn't mean at the beginning of the school year, like it's all year where you continue to talk about different social situations or different things that are coming up with them. And that's why I always talk about those check ins and how important those are so that you stay in touch with how they're doing in different areas so you can support them. And they're going to struggle through some things, and that's okay. That's normal. That's part of it. So it's never like about preventing any challenge or struggle. It's helping support them through it. And these are going to give them the tools as they're getting older to be able to handle this, even as they go into adulthood. And then those organizational skills, one thing you can do is some kids are planner kids. They like planners, they like calendars. I've never had a child who wants to do that, but some people are. And that's very powerful. I like a calendar, but your daughter may have different organizational strengths and areas of need. So you need to ask her, like, what would help her. And if she's not sure, it's trying different things and seeing what works. Folders, like I said, notebooks that are color coded or not, labeling things. You can just try different things and see what works for her. And then a study space, like I mentioned before, having a designated study space and study time. And that can be flexible if they have certain activities, but I think it needs to be set as an expectation that this is when do you feel your best to do your homework, and when can we say it's off limits? Because right before bedtime is typically not a good time to do a lot of homework because they're tired, the emotions are high. That's oftentimes when, in my experience, my teenager has really lost it because the day has gone on and we've done all the activities and there's exhaustion setting in, and then to throw on an academic challenge on top of it is really hard. So just figuring that out and the time management and the way that'll work for your daughter. And then lastly, that emotional well-being is, helping her get enough sleep, helping her move her body, knowing that she has those things in her life, and, eating healthy. It doesn't mean they can't ever have junk food, but just making sure they have a good mix of foods so that they're not developing those habits to where they only eat, junk, because that's not going to help them in the long run, and it's not going to help them do well in school either. So just thinking about, like, okay, what is our family value around food? What do we want to make sure that you're eating every day, or what can you have as an after school snack or whatever that is? And validating those feelings is like helping her feel validated of, like, when something comes up, not making her feel like, oh my gosh, that should not be that big of a deal. Get over it, that kind of thing. More like listening without solving it and just being that safe person for her to be able to vent to. And then talking through it and being like, how can I support you in this? And staying connected is so very important. And I always say, like, in the car or bedtime are those prime times to check in. So those are some things that came up for me with preparing her for a new school year. This is going to help boost her confidence, going to give her that emotional strength. It's going to help her feel more prepared in academics, improve social skills, and also give her better time management. So if this seems overwhelming, just try doing one of the things at a time. and you're going to have a great start to your school year. And I'm always here if you need anything. I love getting messages from you of what's helping, what you need help with. So please share this with a parent of a girl that this could help. And until next time, keep raising those confident girls. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.